Hey, I'm Paeter from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. Welcome to Essential Issues Weekly, where I talk about DC Comics 1 week after their release on the Ultra tier of the DC Universe Infinite subscription service. In each installment, I pick an assortment of comics to talk about as a DC fan and also explore what, if anything, they have to say about the essential issues of real life. Now, warning, full spoilers for everything that I talk about, so be aware this is your first and only warning that many spoilers lie ahead. Right now, we're taking a look at comics originally released to the Ultra tier on May 9th, 2023. And first from that group, I've chosen Spirit World number 1, a new character to me. The description on DC Universe Infinite reads, "From the pages of Lazarus Planet Dark Fate, a new Chinese hero emerges who's able to travel to and from the spirit world, the realm of the dead, and that of the living. Her name is Xanthi, and their name is Xanthi, gotta be clear about that, and their superpower is being able to burn items folded from joss paper and immediately turn them into real objects, based on the East Asian practice of burning joss paper at graveyards in order to send resources to ancestors in the spirit world. Except Xanthi can retrieve those items in the world of the living. Their weapon of choice is a large broadsword, because who doesn't love a big sword when you can choose to use a big sword? Xanthi is a master of the dark arts who's here to give Constantine a run for his money, literally. When Constantine shows up saying Xanthi scammed him into buying something, he finds them and Batgirl Cass Kane fighting an abnormal influx of Jianshi, Chinese hopping vampires, and joins in to help. But when a portal opens up that drags Batgirl into the spirit world, it's up to Xanthi and Constantine to travel to the land of the spirits to rescue her. Who knows what other spirits we'll find in the spirit world, like that skateboarding boy wearing hanfu with some headphones and a gaping hole in his chest. All right, so this one is not really connecting with me, primarily because it's got too light of a tone. It does have a horror-inspired setting, certainly, but the writing is just a little too comedic. The art style just pulls a little bit too much from anime, in particular kind of characters' faces, I guess. Maybe have a little bit more of an anime look than I really would want them to have. Anime in the more young Saturday morning type of vibe. Xanthi, if I'm probably mispronouncing their name, but they're part of the Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. I mean, this comic book and two other characters, Vigil and can't remember the name of the other one. But anyway, and Xanthi, if you couldn't figure it out from my reading and correcting myself, is a non-binary character. And so this book reads to me as fairly box checking in terms of at least a significant part of what is driving it. Specifically, what I mean by that is demographic box checking, which is something that I've noticed DC emphasizing since the New 52 initiative was the first time I really felt like they were doing it really strongly. Now, it is possible to do this sort of demographic box checking without sacrificing story and other creative elements and stuff like that. And maybe someone else that would appreciate the vibe of this book could give me their impression of whether or not it's succeeding at doing that with the box checking going on. But for me, the light tone, the art style is not really for me, and I feel like the way they're representing spiritual realities of this like spirit world, things look a little bit too mundane and normal, and I want them, I guess, to look a little more otherworldly. There's a scene with two kind of, I guess, demons or something that are talking in what looks like a Chinese city late at night with lots of neon lights and stuff, and there's just two women walking around, and then things kind of turn misty and they get all weird and morph into crazy creatures and stuff. But this kind of like visual representation, this visual concept for a spiritual world is just not anything that interests me. I like something that's going to be a little bit more, I don't know, weird or ethereal or bizarre or something like that. And I'm even primed for a book like this right now because I'm enjoying playing Ghostwire Tokyo on the PlayStation 5. And they've got some similar concepts like talismans, like these little pieces of paper that you can use to fight spirits and stuff. And so I think if you're hot off of playing Ghostwire Tokyo and really enjoying that, and you're more interested in a lighter tone, and the box checking issues, aren't going to be a concern for you, then I think that maybe you could find some enjoyment in this, but it's definitely not a book for me because of all those various elements that just aren't My kind of thing. All right, moving on to Stargirl and the Lost Children number 6 with an original publishing date of May 9th, 2023. We had like a cliffhanger last time where Our Man, the JSA, Jeff Johns, Our Man, who's an android from the future made from Tyler Coe DNA or something like that. He was supposedly, died years ago in comic book publishing, sacrificing his life to save two other heroes, the original Our Man and his son, who was kind of carrying on the mantle. And we haven't seen him since, and then he shows up as kind of a villain here. Well, we learn in this issue, which caps off this 6-issue miniseries, that a villain was kind of hijacking him, rewiring his brain to serve his agenda. And so by the end of this story, Our Man is really kind of restored as a hero and is apparently going to be in the Justice Society going forward, which is really cool for me to hear. I don't remember where the original Our Man the original Our Man, I believe, died. But his son, Rex, I can't remember whatever became of him. So maybe we're lacking an Our Man in the DC universe, and Jeff Johns is bringing this one back. I'm totally cool with that. I liked this super duper powered. I tend to like really super powerful characters, and this version of Our Man, oh my gosh, definitely is. So I'm interested in him coming back and seeing what Jeff Johns does with him. Mostly, this book kind of like caps off this mini-series. In terms of the story in and of itself, there's not a whole lot of really interesting revelations and stuff. It's just, okay, we're taking out the bad guy, and then we are wrapping up this book and getting these characters to segue into Justice Society of America. With one exception, there is a big reveal, and that is that Corky, this young coonskin-capped boy who is one of the Time Masters, who's kind of been pretty instrumental in the story of Stargirl and the Lost Children, the ultimate villain of this particular story ends up being an adult version of Corky, who just calls himself Time Master now, and has his own agenda and whatnot, which isn't completely fleshed out. I think ultimately he just wants to keep a tighter grip on time and the potential for it to be manipulated than Stargirl really wants, because she wants to save all these forgotten sidekicks, And there's kind of an interesting message of no one being forgotten that I think might resonate with a number of readers who, I think a lot of us geeks feel in different ways overlooked or forgotten or undervalued, things like that. So I think that kind of messaging is going to connect likely with a lot of readers, especially if that theme continues forward into wherever these characters are featured next, which is probably going to be some book there's a logo at the very end for Young Justice Society. It says, follow, these characters more in, it sets, what is it at the very end? Let me see. Okay, here we go. For more of Stargirl and the Young Justice Society, check out Justice Society of America number 6. And I'm already reading that series and really enjoying it. So having them kind of grafted in to that comic and probably be, using it as a springboard for their own thing, I'm very open to that. So, and I think maybe there's also some potential theming about this character Corky, who realizes, there's a possibility that I will grow up to become this evil villain that we just kind of seemingly defeated and have seen the last of. I kind of hope we haven't seen the last of Time Master. I think he could be a really interesting villain, and kind of gives us cause to pose the question, am I destined to become a villain? Now, Corky thinks that he maybe is destined to become a villain because he saw a future version of himself. But sometimes we can ask these kinds of questions of ourselves, given our upbringing, our genetic parentage, things like that. Am I destined to be this sort of whatever the negative thing is that we have in mind? And so I think there could be some interesting theming there if they bring back Time Master as a villain, which I hope that they do. Next up is Superman Lost number 2 with an original publishing date of April 11th, 2023. And this is an interesting book. It's continuing. It's written by a writer named Priest. That's his professional name. Christopher Priest, he used to go by years ago. Anyway, this is picking up the story where Superman had been pulled into some kind of a singularity, and then he emerges a little while later. It seems like very little time has passed, relatively speaking, but he has been gone for I think months, he said, or maybe like a whole year. He's just lived and been through a lot. And so I think they're going for something weighty here, especially since just a few pages in, we see a big, nearly a full page splash of him lying on the floor in he and Lois's bedroom with kind of some sheets on him and sleeping on the floor. And she walks in and has found him like this more than once and she comes up behind him, she comforts him, and she's like, breathe, Clark, you need to breathe. Because he's been holding his breath. Why is that? Because of the experience that he had, which partially involved trying to survive in space. And this is something that isn't played around with very much when it comes to Superman stories. He's been in space many, many times, and we don't really, see him commenting on the fact that, boy, yeah, he really has to hold his breath. But like, he's so in the mode of what happened and, whatever he experienced over these many months out in space, that as he's lying here, as he's sleeping, he's still in that mode. And so I think it's very evocative of a PTSD type of experience, or something along those lines that they're saying to us Clark is experiencing now. And so, I'm just interested to see where they're going to go, what kind of ramifications this story might have for the character that will be lasting. It would be very significant. I kind of think that once this story's done, it's not going to be referenced outside of this little story, that this could almost be a completely self-contained thing, but we'll see. There's also a reference at some point in the story to his powers being connected to gravity in some way. Now, I had never heard this before. We knew that his powers were connected to solar energy, but the idea that his physiology reacts in some way to gravity was fairly new to me. I mean, way back in the old days, they would say that part of the reason he had super strength was because Krypton had a much heavier gravity than on Earth. But what they're suggesting here is that that his body actually has biochemical reactions to gravity, which I found that was news to me. But they were acting like it's been said before and established somewhere else. So yeah, I don't know. There's kind of a neat character moment that happens at one point while Superman is on an alien planet he's never been to before. He finds that he's, understandably kind of scaring people because of the way he arrives and his powers and stuff like that. And he tries to settle them down, saying, "Wait, I'm not going to hurt you." And he introduces himself as Clark. He says, "Clark, my name is Clark," and he's trying to communicate with them for the first time. I thought it was such a great moment where he's not saying Superman. Yes, it's true that he probably doesn't have to protect his identity here, this far away from, Earth. Who knows how far away he is, but it was still just this nice, transparent moment. And this is what you would expect from Superman. So, you know what? Listen, I'm not concerned about my secret identity. I'm concerned about the people that are right in front of me, and so I thought that was a neat moment. I'm a little confused now and then in this book of whether or not they're going for some symbolism or something. When one of the characters on this alien planet introduces himself, he says his name is Jimmy, and then as he runs away, Superman pauses and then mutters Jimmy. I'm like, what are you saying here? That this is this just Superman totally misunderstanding that pronunciation and just calling him Jimmy, or is he thinking that this is an alternate reality Jimmy, or has he forgotten who Jimmy is and this is triggering some really distant memory? I don't think that's the case. And yet he is on a planet that is reminiscent of Earth. He makes some comparisons to Earth and Earth's technology. But then there's a page where he runs into an ice wall that in the alien language says, "Welcome, Clark." And I'm like, wait a minute, how much time has passed since he just first introduced himself to some aliens a few pages ago? What did they really quickly scramble and put this together, or did people already know who he was? Then a leader shows up and of this planet, introduces himself and kind of tries to acclimate Clark a little bit and makes a comment about the zealots that Clark had talked to earlier that he was trying to communicate with, and says that, they post everything into Tapestry. And Superman says a communal exchange, and he says a disinformation cesspool. And so I assume that's kind of a reference maybe to social media of some kind. But then a couple pages later, Superman says to this guy, "Jimmy, the people of Newark, how can I help them?" And I'm like, does this guy know who you're talking about when you say Jimmy? Because that wasn't that guy's name. And the people of Newark, I looked through this whole issue again. I could not find a reference to Newark. Now, I understand that he was making some comparisons to Earth, but how is this? It seems like a really out of the blue kind of reference or parallel or something. And so the impression that I'm getting with the second issue here, now that we're finally starting to get caught up in what happened to Clark, is that there's some kind of symbolism that the writer is going for, but it's not clear to me what those symbols are, what the writer is getting at, if things are going to become more clear as time goes on. I think I've noticed some tendency toward kind of a political metaphor or political topics in Priest's writing in the past, but not to this level that I've read of his material yet. So at this point, I'm a little bit confused. I think that there are some pieces in place for it to be a very heavy character-driven kind of drama piece about Superman. I think there are some pieces in place for it to have some interesting thematic things to explore. But right now, I'm feeling a little bit lost. So I'm hoping that... No pun intended. It's called Superman Lost, right? I'm hoping that things will get a little bit more clear with issue number 3, which I am gonna read. Finally, Dawn of DC Night Terrors 2023 FCBD Special Edition number 1. FCBD standing for Free Comic Book Day. Anyway, in this pretty short story, Damian Wayne is having a nightmare. He learns that someone evil is manipulating his dream, and so it really serves as a lead-in to the horror crossover event that's going to go for 2 months called Night Terrors, K-N-I-G-H-T. So I don't know if there's a connection to Batman or not. I mean, he's featured prominently on the cover of this, but if it doesn't have a direct tie into Batman, I would think they should have just called it N-I-G-H-T. But anyway, what it looks like there's potential here for it to be a blend of character-driven stories, because there's stuff here where Damian is dealing with... He's learned, basically, he says at the beginning, to combat his own dreams, or to have control of his dreams and to use them to reflect on the events of the day. This is something that he says he's trained himself to do over the years. I would assume to maybe kind of like fight PTSD and fight some of the major scarring psychologically that would happen living the kind of life that he has lived. And so, you know, he sees his parents in a dream, who's Talia al Ghul and Batman. They're about as horrible a pair as could possibly be. And he, in this dream, sees them sitting on a beach and just kind of happy together. And he kind of is psychoanalyzing himself and recognizing, yes, I'm seeing this because I've always dreamed for them to be happy. And that's the part of me that's playing out right now. But then the dream kind of goes south, and he realizes, oh, this isn't exactly what I thought it was. And so there's this dream villain, I guess, that's going to play a major role in these crossovers and tie-ins for Night Terrors. But I see here the potential for, if we're going to see more dream sequences like this, I see the potential for this to be some nice character-driven storytelling that kind of goes across the DC universe. Now, there's a lot of different creators probably going to be involved with this tie-in, so whether or not they all take it as an opportunity to explore character, you know, it remains to be seen, but I think the potential is certainly there. And then also there's potential for lots of horror stuff. It looks like these are all going to be nightmares that we're dealing with, and there's already some pretty grotesque stuff happening in this little special. So, again, another example of like something where the pieces are in place for it to be something that's really going to appeal to me. Character-driven, I love, and horror stuff I tend to love as well. But whether or not it kind of really delivers what I'm interested in reading also remains to be seen. But could be very cool. But yeah, I think that those are all of my thoughts about comic books for now. As always, I'd be grateful if you would stay connected to CGC content over at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth. No!